The other thing I want to mention here at the lead is our friend Letitia James. Oh, the left, Mondami, everybody's up in arms because the grand jury in Virginia, prosecuted by the U.S. Justice Department, has just issued a criminal indictment for mortgage fraud. And that may not be the only one because she's got a property in Brooklyn that was phonied up as well. But she's not a primary residence. She's been renting it out. And so she lied on her application form and apparently got a lower interest rate. Now, you might say that's, you're picking at nits. Maybe so. But this is exactly the crap that she pulled on Donald Trump. No one's above the law. Remember that? No one's above the law. As she created a phony case against Trump, most of which had been thrown out, not all of which, but most of which. A couple years ago, weaponizing it, advised by the Biden White House. I'm not sure Trump ever did anything wrong, not one single thing wrong, finagling business records, but she will be in some trouble because there's wire fraud and bank fraud as well. So Letitia James, we'll talk about that later on in the show. She's in trouble. I don't care what the left says. So one of the great achievements here, truly great achievements, is the growing possibility of peace in the Middle East. As the president said, it's been going on for 3,000 years. The hostage release is expected coming up. I believe the president's flying to Israel to speak to the Knesset on Sunday, tomorrow, and hopefully this will go relatively smoothly. One of the key foreign policy players in the Congress is Congressman Brian Mast, who is currently the chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee. Mr. Mast from the great state of Florida. Chairman Mast, thank you for doing this. Appreciate it, Brian.
Man, it's just an important time to talk about what's going on. That's the truth.
I had a thought and talked about it with General Keane and so forth. One of the reasons that this whole story looks to be finally successfully on its way to conclusion is the ability of President Trump to work with Netanyahu and employ the use of military force, not appeasement. The Bidens, every time they talked about military force, the IDF, or bombing Iran, which is the ultimate culprit in this, the Bidens would say, no, we can't use force because that will escalate. But it turns out the judicious use of military force de-escalated and may well end in peace. I mean, what do you make of that?
I think there's two important points to make on military force and appeasement. Number one, there's good escalation and there's bad escalation. For us, if we're taking a military action, a lethal action, and we're degrading the capabilities of our enemies or adversaries, well, that's a great thing for us. We've degraded the enemy. They're incapable of escalating. That's, in the end, what we want. So this idea that because we escalate, that it's this bad thing and there's this tit for tat that goes back and forth, that's not the reality of all conflict. Our goal is to degrade the enemy so that they can't do a tit for tat, and that's what President Trump has done. And with Iran, as you mentioned, he made sure that any tit for tat that Iran would want to do, they cannot respond with something measured in kilotons or megatons. And when you look at the idea of appeasement, President Trump didn't do what Canada or France or UK or these other world leaders did, where they went out there and they said, well, we're going to bend the knee. We're going to recognize a Palestinian state, even though they've been in this 2 years of war. They conducted this genocide. We're going to recognize a state that we would immediately have to call a state sponsor of terror. He didn't do that. He didn't build worthless piers into Gaza. He had the back of our ally, worked with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and is continuing to work with him to this day. And that's, as you pointed out, a significant difference, not just from his predecessor, but from other world leaders.
I mean, Chairman Mast, he gave an open hand to the Israelis and to the IDF so that they could do what they needed to do with respect to Hamas and Gaza and so forth. And again, every time, even every single time, Joe Biden and his people, what's his name, Blinken, whatever his name is, the Secretary of State, they'd always be nitpicking Israel. They'd always be saying, don't do this, don't do that. It was just a completely different policy. And I think, the judicial use of military force is such an important part of this story and probably other stories as well. Force should never be ruled out. That's just appeasement.
Sometimes you have to give war a chance, and war is the remedy that the terrorists, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, Lions Den, Fatah, Hamas, all of them, that's the remedy that they chose. But let's stay on that point for one moment about having the back of Israel and the IDF and Prime Minister Netanyahu. So the whole world, from the beginning, from October 7, they started to say, even after this genocide took place, Israel, don't go crazy on this. Let's let cooler heads prevail. They just had, hundreds, killed and taken captive, thousands and bodies to this day still not returned. And the world is saying, hey, don't go crazy over this. And then, you fast forward. Don't you dare go past Ramadan, Israel. If you go past Ramadan, all hell's going to break loose. Israel continued on, and the world, everybody across the world benefited. And then the world said, don't you dare go into Rafah. If you go into Rafah, that's a bridge too far. But they did, and the whole world benefited, and the Muslim Brotherhood wasn't able to smuggle rockets and bombs and other things into Gaza. And then they said, don't you dare go into Lebanon, and they did, and they were able to bring this eradication of Hezbollah, and we saw the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad as a result, right? And they said, don't you dare go here, don't you dare go there, don't you dare go to these places. We saw the pager bombs. Time and time again, the whole world benefited because the Israelis were given the latitude by President Trump to do what they needed to do to conduct this war and fight terrorism. And terrorists were killed, Sinwar, others eradicated off of the face of this earth. The world is a better place.
And Chairman Brian Mast, so now we're looking forward. Mr. Trump's going to head over there, I reckon, tomorrow, give a speech before the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. Regarding the governance and steps from here, how do you see it? What are the issues? Are there pitfalls? It's not quite over yet.
Step one, obvious, largest thing going on, bringing home the 25 or so remaining living hostages or 20 to 25 or 25 to 28 corpses, the bodies of those that they have been holding on to, the Hamas terrorists. That's just number one, bringing all of those bodies and those hostages home. That's step one. After that, of course, you can anticipate Hamas does not want to give up power, and they've garnered, in part, a worldwide support. That's a big hurdle to get over, for this peace process, of which the president has been clear. They have no presence whatsoever. This isn't like when the IRA and England ended things, or what took place in South Africa. You're not going to have an IRA or Sinn Féin take over. You're not going to have the ANC like in South Africa take over. Hamas is done. They will have no part of this government or any of these other armed terrorist groups that have been a part of the area. That's going to be a tough hurdle to get over because they're going to want to continue to have this political presence. And the president has been clear that can't take place. So that's another one of those big steps that the president has to work through. But I have every confidence because of the history of what the president has done, of Secretary Rubio, of Secretary Hegseth, of Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. Take your pick of all of these. They continue to get over the hurdles that are placed in front of them, and I think this will be no different.
What happens? I'm not sure I understand this peace board of which President Trump will preside. Tony Blair will play a role. They talk about Palestinian technocrats, Brian Mast. What's your read on that?
Well, it's been a statement in the plan that the area of Gaza will not be handed over just simply to the Palestinian Authority, and here you go. There have to be reforms taking place to ensure that Israel and the people in Gaza can live in a peaceful coexistence. And if the answers were just obvious, they would have just been written out in the 21-point plan, but they're not obvious. And so that next step is there have to be talks. There have to be everybody getting together after these world-changing events, everything that's gone on since October 7th, and the world's involvement to say, where are we at now? How do you live in this peaceful coexistence? This is what takes place. There are not clear, obvious paths and answers to that, but we do know a few parts of the framework, which we talked about already. None of these terrorist organizations will have any part of the governments or the politics of this area. They are gone.
Yeah, that's a key point. Absolutely, 100%. Now, will President Trump turn to Russia, Ukraine, and what do you expect there?